Welcome to Open Comments with myself, Ash. Today's guest is Einar Landre. He's a computer scientist by training with a master's degree in software engineering. Thank you for joining us today. Einar, please can you start by telling us more about you and your career journey so far?
Okay, thank you, Ash. I think I'm looking back. I think my career is 4 decades. But I think when I look at it, I split it in two. Because in my first, say, 20 some years, I spent time I was living in Oslo, and I worked for, say, a computer company in, say that basically for 7 years, from I was basically 25 till I was 31, something like that. Mm-hmm. And where I basically, maintained some pieces of software, supported software, developed new software, and had a great time. And then this hits and the mini machines collapsed back in, I think it was 1989 or something like that. Of course, the company went down the drain, layoff. So I figured out, I need to do something else. So then I moved on and worked more or less as a consultancy for years. And as consultancy, I had a lot of, say, interesting tasks, working for, say, for the European Space Agency and the Columbus space module still in use on the space station. Mm-hmm. With some fun software there, satellite software for imaging of radar images. A lot of fun. And also the police in Norway for the Olympics in '94 was on that project. Amazing stuff. Of course, you have this sort of a very final deadline, will not move, and you need to make it work for whatever reason it is. So I think that's, and then of course being introduced to leadership roles, running consultancy business, moving from having leadership roles into, say, being architect on various projects in different, say, from retail, and which brought me to the oil and gas sector as well. Then beginning on the retail side as a consultant, and then being basically, and that, say, coincided with my move to Stavanger for family reasons. And Stavanger and Norway equals oil. And I was working for Statoil, then Statoil, now Equinor, and started out as a consultant. They wanted to employ me, and that basically when I moved into my second part of my career, mm-hmm. which has basically lasted for 20 years now, and where I have various roles in Equinor, in the IT dimension of Equinor, mm-hmm. where I've had several roles over the years, ending up with OSDU, which I think will be the things that I stay with until I leave the company, take my retirement, put it that way.
And can you tell us a little bit about your interest in oil and gas and where that started, please?
Yeah, I say the fun fact here is that if I hadn't moved to Stavanger, I think I would never work for oil and gas. Mm-hmm. Because in Oslo, there is a lot of interesting tech companies, consultancies, but there is very limited with the oil and gas activity. So, but I think when I moved and was introduced and started to understand, and particularly the subsurface domain, the drilling wells domain, of course, its complexity is enormous, seen from a computer scientist's perspective. It's in many ways it's a muddy domain, put it that way, to quote Stephen Whitley. We used the same phrase once upon a time. So I think that it's an area where a lot of say with a lot of hard problems, mm-hmm. and of course, and I think I have always enjoyed being part of trying to solve hard problems. That's basically been what triggers me. So, mm-hmm. so no really passion for the industry itself, but it's a place with the great opportunities for great fun. So.
Thank you. And circling back to problem solving, do you think that's been a part of you all this time, or is there a particular process that you like about, breaking down problems and getting to the solutions, or is it more you face, problems head on and then find the solutions afterwards?
I think I've always enjoyed, say, with experimenting with things.
Okay.
Physics, things like that. In my childhood, I always built this sort of models of we sort of build cars and see if we can, basically you can, I'm not sure what you call it in English, but basically this sort of having some wheels, put them on some sort of frame, and then you can try to run downhill. It's gravity pull you down. So I've always been that sort of building models and experimenting. I think that's been part of my nature since I was quite young.
Would you say that also links to how you approach maybe lifelong learning, in the sense of, you're always learning, you're always growing, you like to problem solve, so you're always looking for the next challenge?
Yes, I think so. I think that you have this sort of, when I look back on my career, I think I always find these sort of 7-year cycles when I go into something new, and that doesn't need to be within the same. It doesn't mean to change employer, but at least to change area. And sometimes between when I've been there in a particular area for say 5 to 7 years, I see that I get bored.
Yeah.
So then I need to find something new to address and challenge myself to see if I can reboot myself, to put it in computer tech terminology.
And next up, please can you tell us about your journey with the Open Group OSD Forum so far?
With respect to the forum, I was part of the founding meetings. I still don't remember. It was if it was in 18 or 19. I'm not sure which one I was, but at least I was in the founding meeting in Houston, and I've then been involved more or less since, and engaged in typically in work groups, enterprise architectures, the capability group, operating model, and voiced my opinions in the forums, different channels. So quite active, I think. Which then, and then when Equinor reorganized in 2021, I basically was told, okay, you work on OSDU. You're too critical for us to do something else, because there was some sort of opportunities for other things as well. So I said, okay, well, that's okay. It's fun. And I never looked back. I thought it was great years. And feel this sort of, we are moving forward. Of course, it's sometimes 2 steps forward and 1 back, but I think that's how it is. So, and then I ended up in the OMC. Elected, I thought that, which is a good credit. At least those who voted for me must at least think that, he's a good guy. So that's nice.
And would you say being part of, collaborating with many professional individuals also helps in terms of, your growth and how you learn from others, but also the knowledge that you gain from others as well?
Yes, I think that, and that's for me. And I've been, over the years also engaged in some other sort of, conferences and forums where clever people meet and discuss, and also have fun. And I think those arenas have always made me thrive. Even though I'm basically an introvert, or more introvert than extrovert, I find joy in attending these collaborative sessions with engaged and smart people. It gives me something.
Do you think as well it helps with, when you're finding solutions maybe for particular projects and also focusing on those outcomes, that working with different people, throwing ideas around, thinking about the viewpoints that they bring to the table and seeing where they're coming from, solving like problems head on and finding solutions, that helps, not only build on collaboration, but also make it more satisfying when you reach, the goal at hand as well?
Definitely. I think that great stuff is never built in isolation. In sort of course, you have Einstein and others who have basically been genius, but I think that when it comes to really great stuff, and I think it's also the process of making it is much more, say, prosperous when you can have people with different backgrounds, whatever that means in terms of, say, from coming from different places of this, say, and different backgrounds in all respects, is something that really, it for me, it's really rewarding to be part of that type of collaborations and work. You can learn a lot from others.
Would you say also mentorship is big for you as well? Or, it could be mentoring others, but also being mentored by people as well in terms of your career journey so far?
I think that, say, almost everybody that I know who have, say, at least I would say, who have developed a career, there are individuals that was there early and basically gave them something that, say, pushed them over, they pushed them forward, or helped them to push themselves forward, to maybe be more precise. And so it was with me. In my first real, say, job, I had this guy called Nisse Larsson, who's basically, he basically taught me everything he knew about the subject. And I think that I've always been thankful to him. And I've heard a similar story from a lot of friends who have the same, okay, yes, there was this guy. And that back in that time, there was only guys who did this kind of, because there was no girls working in this environment. And even heard, say, that was last fall. That was when she's been basically, she did her PhD on Oxford 20 years ago, and she came and we met again and said, "You were my first mentor," she told me, when we basically were colleagues 3 decades ago. So I think it is sort of trying to build this sort of, trying to be this kind of, say, not this sort of besserwisser on the wall, but at least help those who are young and early in their careers to understand, okay, I'm here to support you. I think that's important. Teach you all I know, and you will go beyond me. I think that's also another thing with that. You know that the apprentice outperforms the master at some point in time. And I think also find that rewarding.
And would you say as well, just continuing on that point, that it also, involves the knowledge that you share and you impart onto someone else, because they have different ways of working? It may not necessarily mean to, mold them into yourself, but you're also giving them space to be themselves, but giving them, I guess you could say, the tools to do that, along the way. That's how I, perceive mentoring to be in that sense.
Yeah, I think that's crucial, because I think that if you are not, you need to be true to yourself, basically, to be able to develop. I think that goes for all of us, one way or the other. And if you are not, and if you are molded into somebody else's sort of, then you run into these sort of, compromises.
Yes.
And I don't think and then people will figure out that, okay, you are not you are not a mentor anymore. You are basically it gets ugly, easily gets ugly. That's what I say. So it's extremely important to build upon what they are, build on their own strengths, put it that way.
Yes.
Nurture their own strengths.
Yes. And can you describe any exciting projects that you are currently working on, and that you have any that are coming up that you're most looking forward to?
I think as it is now, I do OSDU forum activities full time. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the arena. So that's the thing that I'm doing. So I think it's to help bring Venus into fruition, mm-hmm. and that it becomes it becomes a success. And mm-hmm. The answer to that we know in a year's time, I think. But so that's the main thing on. Except then, if you move into my other project, is that I'm practicing karate, so I'm preparing for a new downgrade for in a year's time. That's also this sort of endless learning process. You're never educated. Just keep on churning on. Mm-hmm. That's but professionally, it's always the OSDU journey. That's my primary undertaking, and then I try to build some small apps for my iPhone to just have some sort of training practice, but on programming. But that's basically too far between the time slots I have to spend on it.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to the last part of the interview, particularly advice for those looking to work in a similar field as yourself. What type of advice would you maybe give them, or other particular anecdotes that you have carried forward, or even any inspirational advice that stuck with you as well?
Yeah, that's I think one of my first advice is I think that it's extremely important to learn something to a level of being recognized by your peers as a master of that area.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think that because that gives you this sort of and I say that not going into that you become a self-declared expert, but basically that you're recognized among your peers that you really know this, and because I think that kind of journey, and particularly in your early career, these things gives you this sort of springboards for moving on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Second thing I think is that you never stop learning. Mm-hmm. Be curious, challenge yourself, and I think also would include on that, don't be afraid to expose yourself. There shouldn't be that kind of if we didn't do mistakes, we wouldn't learn. That's mm-hmm. another thing. Humans mm-hmm. learn by doing mistakes, not by succeeding in everything we do. So mistakes are important, but of course, make sure that you don't harm yourself or others when that happens. Of course, that's it. Mm-hmm. And my last thing goes into what I say: try to be egoless. And what do I mean by that? And I think that I've seen it with people who have spent too long time within a particular, with a particular product or a particular solution. They tie their own ego to the product. So criticisms of the product becomes criticisms of themselves, which makes them extremely vulnerable. So this sort of decouple yourself from the artifacts you are part of making and step back and see them as, I was part of that. We did maybe a good job. We did maybe not that good job, but at least it's not me. I'm not the product I made.
Yes.
And do that kind of make sure that you because then products have their own life cycles. Sometimes there is always. Most of us have people above us, one way or the other. And sometimes things are stopped for reasons we don't like, or And then it's extremely important to not tie your own personality to the success of the product. So be egoless. That's my last advice in that space.
Thank you. And if you could give advice to your younger self before starting in this respective position, what would that advice be and why?
To give an advice to my young self?
Yes.
Was that, yes, okay, that's an interesting one. I think it's this sort of, I'm not sure. Because I think one of my advices, of course, is that you should never give up. Okay, so if you say, and with that, I'd say that does not mean that something comes to an end. We came this far, and it's the correct thing to turn around and walk down because it's too dangerous, too difficult, or impossible. But is this sort of not give up before you have before it's tried.
Yes.
I think try things before you always try things before you give up.
Perfect. So we'd like to thank you for coming on to the Open Comments podcast, and we hope our listeners have enjoyed this episode as much as we have in learning about your career journey so far and what you are passionate about. And we'd also like to thank all of our listeners, the Open Comments community, who have been tuning into Open Comments so far. Please stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.